Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from the Daily Signal dated October 19th. It says this really is the most important election of our lifetimes. Here's why. And you see this usually from the left all the time, and it's just kind of like you just roll your eyes and go, is it really? But I kind of agree that it is at this point. So let's see what the author has to say here. It says, we've heard it so often it has become a cliche. This is the most important election of our lifetime, but that doesn't mean it's not true. So I'm glad he agrees with me, at least on that part, that it's become cliche. So I really believe it is, for one overarching reason. It's the only election we can affect. The outcomes of 2020, 2016, and all previous campaigns are now in the rearview mirror. Nothing can be done about them, not so regarding what happens on November 5th. Because the people we choose to lead our nation are up to us, and that makes this, like any future election, the most important election of our lifetimes. That said, the stakes are so high this time I can think of nearly a dozen more reasons, so let's actually hear those reasons. Says its effects may be more consequential than ever. Just think of the lasting damage wrought by the elections of, say, Woodrow Wilson in 1912 or Franklin Roosevelt in 1932, or the lasting benefits that came out of the 1980 election of Ronald Reagan. Whether good or ill, we understand the hands we've been dealt in the past. In a world where we're being told that borders are bad, killing babies is good, and men should be allowed in women's locker rooms, the paradigm that will crystallize under the next administration could be even more game-changing. It says the Constitution is under more assault than ever. It says for decades now, self-serving and irresponsible politicians have expanded the scope, breadth, and power of the federal government even as they provide lip service to constitutional constraints. Today, however, the political left is dispensing with all pretenses, taking open aim at the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They want to eliminate the Electoral College, reapportion the Senate by population rather than by state, and emasculate the First and Second Amendments, among other things. Once those bulwarks are gone, there will be no stopping them. Yeah, so they're all authoritarians. They don't realize that they are, and that always reminds me of something like this. Reminds me of there was a study done fairly recently. I'm talking like in the last few months that they pulled like authoritarianism on the left and right. And it turns out that the people on the right that had authoritarian instincts knew they were being authoritarian, but the people on the left didn't understand that they were being authoritarian. And in fact, the study even said that the more authoritarian their beliefs were, the less likely they were to actually know that they were being authoritarian. So this is the kind of thing where you tell people on the far left that want to do all this stuff here, like, guys, that's going to destroy things. You're just being authoritarians. They won't understand that. Okay, because they just want power. That's it. It's just the pursuit of power. Nothing more than that. They could care less about our institutions. So continuing on, it says, Congress is weaker than ever. The administrative state has become a leviathan that too few in Congress have the courage to slay. So it's been nearly 3 decades since the legislative branch has followed the proper appropriations process, during which time executive branch agencies have been given a free hand in not only issuing rules that have the force of law, but to act as judge, jury, and executioner in their enforcement. So we must return to effective checks and balances. And I didn't know. I would like to know more about this, but yeah, we should go back to the way things were because it worked. So it says the courts are assailed more than ever. It says the one branch of government operating somewhat as it should is the recently reconstituted Supreme Court, which is slowly reining in decades of abusive legislation from the bench. A proper separation of powers, however, is unacceptable to the left, and if it gets its way, it will expand and impact the court, removing the Constitution's last line of defense, and we must prevent that from happening. Yeah, I don't understand this wanting to pack the Supreme Court, but you can tell anybody that says that, again, is an authoritarian, and they want to destroy everything. And if you want to live in like a one-party state, something that tends to only work like on the left, for example. I mean, in terms of work being like, it only tends to happen on the left. You can say there's a couple of right-wing states out there, sure, but I mean, like, Soviet Union is left, a certain time in Germany between 1933 and 1945 was on the left, North Korea, China, so yeah, there you go. And that's what we're going to end up being like if our norms and our institutions are destroyed. So today's voters are more civically ignorant than ever. That is exactly it. I was going to say, for some reason I thought saying that couldn't be farther from the truth, and I was going to amend that to that is exactly the truth, but so I kind of slipped up there. But yes, that is 100% accurate. It says those of us who are old enough benefited from civics education when we were growing up. Most of today's young voters have little understanding of our republic and the principles upon which it was founded. More likely, their understanding of our nation is based on historical misrepresentations like A People's History of the United States and the 1619 Project, leading them to vote against their own long-term interests. By the time they dismantle the institutions that protect them, it will be too late. And here's one that I'm worrying about more and more as time goes on. It says our national debt is more gargantuan than ever. It says when you people, no, it doesn't say that. What am I reading? It says when more people are benefiting from government largesse than funding it, you have a problem. And our $35 trillion problem amounts to more than $275,000 in debt per household. And now that interest on the debt has itself, for the first time, topped $1 trillion, we're headed to exponentially worse territory. We must both grow the economy and limit spending to keep our ship from sinking. Our borders are more porous than ever. America is a nation of immigrants, but a nation isn't a nation without borders. Untold millions of illegal immigrants have been pouring across our borders, exacerbating drug abuse, crime, and human trafficking, to say nothing of stressing our already stretched safety net. Immigrants who follow the rules are welcome in America, but those who won't must no longer be allowed in. And it says assimilation is weaker than ever. So the greater the number of immigrants, the greater the need for effective assimilation. America has always been a melting pot, but those who wish to see our common bonds weakened would exchange e pluribus unum for e pluribus conflictus. And I'm guessing, I guess I can kind of figure out what that means just from the word there. It says we can't allow our culture to become any more balkanized. That is true, and yeah, the people that come here should want to become a part of our society. I mean, you're basically coming into someone's house and saying, no, I'd rather just play by my own rules in somebody else's house, even though that goes against everything in that person's house. It's like, no, you should be wanting to play by the rules of the house that you go into. So it says drugs are deadlier than ever. It says when I was a kid in high school, marijuana was mild, the cost of cocaine put it out of reach, and we went to the convenience store to get a big gulp. Yeah, pretty much. It says today addictive weed is legally available on every corner, and fentanyl can be bought for as little as 50 cents a pill. We have a drug-induced death epidemic that must be stopped. It says weapons of war are deadlier than ever. It says the world has always been a dangerous place, but the possibility of global destruction is fewer than 100 years old. Today, not only are we seeing frightening advances in conventional weaponry, for example, hypersonic missiles and deadly drones, but entirely new kinds of weaponry, for example, directed energy and genetic weapons, must continually enhance our ability to defend ourselves. It says the world is more dangerous than ever, and this is the final section here. It says there are hot wars raging in Europe and the Middle East, and so Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas situation, either of which could easily expand to engulf the region or the world. And while most of our adversaries are rational, not wishing to die any more than we do, some consider martyrdom an honor. Gee, I wonder who that could be. It says we need a foreign policy with teeth that balances diplomacy with deterrence. It says that's a dozen reasons, and I suspect you can think of many more. None of the candidates are ideal, and no administration will be perfect, but the ratchet of government excess has for decades been turning leftward. If we're ever to reverse its direction, we first must do what we can to halt it, and that's why this is the most important election of our lifetimes. So do you agree with this? Do you think this is the most important election of our times? And if there are reasons on here that the author missed, can you add any to them? What do you think about everything here as well? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.